Giles, you're celebrating this year your 10th year of being in coaching. What I was initially wondering about that was about how coaching in rugby in particular has evolved in the 10 years you've been coaching and how you've got to keep up with it, but also how you also might not, you have to resist the temptation to adapt to everything that comes out, every piece of technology, every idea. How much is that an issue?
I don't know if celebrating is the right word. It's hard to believe it's 10 years. It's flown by. I think you're absolutely right that there's a lot of fads in coaching. And you've got to be able to develop your filter as to what's useful and what's not. And one of the key things, and you read, I've spoken to some of these guys like Stuart Lancaster and Eddie Jones, as a name drop for you there. And you read a lot of interviews with these people, and the biggest thing they say is you've got to keep learning. And you've got to keep challenging yourself to learn. That's going on courses or reading books or whatever it might be. But the big thing is that whenever you go on one of these things, you've got to be prepared to sit there and take some time afterwards to work out what works for you, what works for your environment. And really what it comes down to is what your coaching philosophy is. And that is an ever-evolving process. And when I started out coaching, my philosophy was quite a wordy paragraph, whereas I've got to a point now where it's more for sort of guiding principles. And that's taken a significant amount of time to get to that point and be comfortable with that point, being at that point as well. And you might only go to one of these things, you might only get one thing out, but it's then making sure that is applicable and you are able to apply it, you're able to apply it in your own way. And I think the biggest challenge that I've seen in the last 10 years is direct transfer. There's a lot, people have gone very drill based to being very, very game orientated now in terms of how you practice. And that is not revolutionary. It's entirely cyclical. We were talking to the boys the other day, a bit of a history lesson. A chap called Pierre Villepreux. He's a French guy. He sort of came on board with the very first ideas of teaching games for understanding. And then it drifted away because everyone said, well, you've got to be able to do drills. And then we went whole, part, whole. And then we went part, whole, part. And now we're sort of at, well, let's just use games. But what people have lost sight of is what the skill, you've got to have a focus of the skill and make sure you go back to that skill within the game. And I think that's the big challenge for coaches at any level now, is making sure you're not just playing games for game's sake. There has to be a real focus of it. And you've got to be able to make sure that the quality is high, but that your coaching philosophy blends into what it is that you're trying to do.
One thing that I hear from some coaches, which you may be able to comment on being a head coach or a director of rugby now, is that they just see themselves as coaches and don't want the headache of being a head coach. How much have you had to learn to be a psychologist in terms of knowing what boys want to hear in team talks? How much have you had to manage the financial side of things? Or is that frustration? Do you sometimes wish I'd just get down to get my feet on the grass?
I'm happiest when I'm out on the grass. The reality is that the further you go up the greasy pole, the further you go from what you love doing, and that's the same in any profession. Certainly, I am, as you say, I'm director of rugby here, and I have responsibilities that are not just on the paddock. I've got some very, very good people that support me, and I trust them implicitly to be able to go out and do what we're working on, and trust them to deliver good sessions, and trust the boys to take on board what they're being asked to do. And in every environment that I work in, I think that's the same. You've got to have good people, and you've got to be able to trust them so that you can step off. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned, regardless of whether I've had to go and do other things within a club. You've got to be prepared to step off and try and look at things in a slightly broader way. And I think when I first started out, all I did was coach. But you have to be prepared. If you're going to stick your head above the parapet, eventually you're going to have to be prepared to get more involved in the nitty-gritty of how things work. And the executive here are incredibly supportive, and I feel we've got a good relationship, and that it's good that they are prepared to involve me in some of the decision making that goes on, and likewise it's great that I can lean on them for some advice and opinion as we go through a season. I wouldn't have chosen, you don't choose to be a director of rugby. I think director of rugby, there's a lot of different definitions of director of rugby. You've got some guys who all they do is move bits around a chessboard and they don't never get out on the field. And I don't ever want to be that guy. I'm the sort of person that ultimately my bread and butter is out on the paddock, and as I said, that's where I'm most happy, and that's where I want to get to.
What would you say your biggest achievement in those 10 years has been?
That's a good question. Obviously, winning the league with Macclesfield twice, once as an assistant and once as head coach, is something it's a league winners medal. I've got 2 of them, thanks very much. And not that I think I played a huge part in that. It's the guys out in the field that do the hard work, but it's nice to have been involved in winning those leagues. Being asked to be involved in the England programme and playing a small part in the journey of some of the guys who've gone on to bigger and better things. There's a number of players in the Sale team at the moment who I work with England Counties under-18s, and you look at what they're doing. I consider that to be a huge achievement on their part, and as I say, to have played a small part in their journey is rewarding. When England 20s won the World Cup a couple of years ago, there were a lot of boys who'd been involved in our programme then, and again, to have been a part of their journey is particularly rewarding. That's ultimately what we do it for. And I guess, purely from a personal, selfish perspective, I think just trying to stay relevant. Hopefully some of the boys would say that we're always on the move, we're always trying to evolve, and that is the challenge that we have as a coaching fraternity, but it's a challenge that I particularly enjoy, just staying relevant and current, and even trying to get a little bit ahead in how we do things and what we do.
Obviously, you've been working at this level and with the England Counties lads, doing lots of bits and pieces. How far would you like to go in coaching? Would you like to go full time?
Well, if the opportunity came up, I think that would be great. But I'm very happy doing what I'm doing at the moment. I'm very fortunate that in my day job at Cheadle School, they're very supportive of me working at Macclesfield. Macclesfield are very supportive of me working with England. And, I think when I first started out in my coaching career, it was all about being involved in the professional game. And whilst that aspiration hasn't gone, I've got a family who I'd like to see. And, I think I've learned perspective and balance over the last 3 or 4 years particularly. And, if the opportunity came up, it'd be foolish not to have a chat, but I'm very happy here at the moment.
Obviously, you've been at this club for the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a massive part of your coaching. How much would you rate your experience at Macclesfield as part of what you've become as a coach?
Well, this is start of year 6, believe it or not. I had 4 very enjoyable years at Wilmslow before I came here, and being able to work with Jeff Wappett and Andy Northey for 2 years was a brilliant apprenticeship. For anybody, regardless of whether I was going to stay here or not, just the opportunity to work with those 2 was superb, and some fantastic players as well over the course of those 5 years previous. But the club gave me an opportunity when Jeff decided he was going to step away, and as I said, they've been incredibly supportive. Peter Harper and the rest of the executive, they're always at the end of the phone, or we can always have a pint and a chat. And as you say, it's a big part of my life. I played rugby here, although when I moved to Manchester when I was a kid, I played at Wilmslow, and some of my friends who I played rugby with still call me the traitor. But coming over here, that was when I was playing, so to be coaching here as well is, I'm surprised they even speak to me, but it's a great club. I think it's got a great atmosphere on a Saturday. It's a great bunch of boys here, and my family feels very happy here, very welcomed, and that really to me is what rugby's all about. Family, we want it to be a family atmosphere, and that's something we really push for every day.
Last question, and there is probably an easier way I could ask this, but I'll ask it the way I was planned to. The other day, somebody said to me about the analysis side of things, what would your advice be to young people getting started in it? And I didn't realise that I had got past the point of being a younger person getting started in it. So if someone was to say to you, what's your advice to coaches getting started, younger coaches, would you say, hang on, I'm a young coach still learning, or would you say, I've got bags to tell you?
I certainly don't think I know it all by any stretch. And the day that I do is the day that I'll stop doing it. I think I still consider myself to be a very young coach. I mean, although it's 10 years, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. We'll go out and do a session, and there's always a question that you ask yourself when you're sitting back as to, could I have done that better, or how do we do this, or you're always seeing a new idea in any, with all the sports or whatever it is that I'm looking at. But I'd probably give the piece of advice that I was given. There's a chap called Ian Thompson, who sadly is no longer with us. He used to work for the RFU, and when I was starting out coaching, he sat me down and he said, the best thing you can do is not say no. And just get into anything and everything that you can, so that you are in different environments and you're working with different people and that sort of thing. But I would then add to that advice that once you get to a point, it's about the quality, not the quantity. Because yes, we can do a lot, but it's making sure that what we're doing is at a level that people are going to respect you for, and that you are, more importantly, comfortable delivering. I think the moment you start compromising the quality of what you're doing, then you've got to consider where it is and what it is that you are doing.
Giles, thank you very much. Congratulations on your decade in coaching, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Thanks, Matt.